Hello. So the guys at Box Wars, if you go downstairs, they made this shield for me. So part of our charity is usually I don't have a business suit. I usually have a suit of armor through these races. And there's a metal shield that we carry through. That's our logo. And that stands for More Heart Than Scars, that in the battle of life, where there's conflict in your heart or your fears, you can block with a shield to protect. But the beautiful thing about a shield is you can put it next to your brother or sister as a shield wall. And so the guys at Box Wars made a cardboard shield. So I feel, I'm not used to going into battle without a shield, so here it is. So we're going to get started with a father of one of my students put this video together about halfway through our journey of working with adaptive athletes and students on the autism spectrum.
This is 5 years. On the 29th of April, after the Boston bombing, we started this company. The idea was to let people know that terror and fear would not win. Our words are this: say, do you have more faith than fear? Do you have more love than hate? Do you have more hope than despair? And do you have more heart than scars? So for the people who may have invisible scars or ones on the outside, all of us together can choose to live in victory, not defeat. So everybody might maybe have learning differences, they may have emotional problems, or they may have addictions, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter if you decide that you have more heart than scars, you're one of us.
So we're going to talk about how we got there. And we're going to begin with playing in the mud. So the one on the right is my daughter, Snow Lily, and she is not looking like a snowflower at the moment. So playing in the mud, it's a basic instinct that when we're little, we're like, yeah, let's go out, let's play in the earth. Don't do that, don't do that. But as you grow up, getting back in the mud and playing is pretty powerful. I was at some conference with a bunch of speakers, and people are talking about what you do for a living. And my name tag, they said, what do you really do? I said, well, I'm a mental health professional, blah, blah, blah. And they said, draw what you really do. I said, well, I take autistic students and I throw them in mud puddles. And so playing in the mud is how concrete empathy can transform the lives of adaptive athletes and students on the autism spectrum. So when you saw Mark as a wheelchair athlete, that's Mark Herbert, and he was going up and over the wall, he's an adaptive athlete because he's adapting to the sport of Spartan races. And our students, there's visible scars and invisible scars. I'm not saying that autism is perhaps a scar, but it's a challenge. And so we're going to talk about how we got students on the autism spectrum and adaptive athletes together and playing in the mud. There's two mostly neurotypical gentlemen, and they're mostly adults playing in the mud there. The Spartan finish line jumping over the fire. Can anybody think of a reason or two why it might not fly for children on the autism spectrum? From what you know about autism, just anybody who wants to throw out what might be difficult about being covered in mud, going for 8 hours, being touched by strangers, people screaming at you, and being incredibly uncomfortable. Anything come to mind? All of it, right? So when this idea came up, I was in a 60-hour race, and a woman volunteer came along, and she started feeding me chocolate, and I hadn't had any good food for a while. And I said, yeah, sure. She said, can my son help you in a race? I'm like, yeah, great. Who are you? Sure. My son's on the autism spectrum. I think he could help you. I'm like, yeah, I agreed to it. Concrete empathy. So our students that I work with at Black Mountain Academy, if I was to say to them, hey, you need to finish your piece because there's children in Africa that don't have enough food to eat. That abstract idea doesn't play well for kids. In fact, our kids are so bright, and they're going to think of it, they say, well, Mr. Zach, do you want me to wrap my peas up, maybe freeze them, send them across the ocean? Who would want to eat my peas? How would we distribute them? So that idea, that abstract idea doesn't click in. There needs to be a concrete, meaningful connection. So concrete empathy is more than just understanding where a person is coming from. It's marching beside them and lifting one another's spirits along the way. When you make a connection, especially with a student on the autism spectrum, connects with a wheelchair athlete as a person. That's Mark. I'm going to help Mark through. That's Erica. I'm going to help her through. I can walk, and she can't, so I'm going to do that for them. So this is proof of play, 1981, USA. That's me. When they found out I was doing a talk on play, I was like, that's kind of up my alley. I think I've been doing that for a while. Begin the idea of where we get from a handicap to adaptive. So my life was dramatically impacted by that symbol. My grandmother, Charlotte, began as a total tomboy, and she loved to go hiking. She taught me about the woods. And as she began to get older, she was having to use a cane, and then a walker, and then ended up in a wheelchair. She eventually needed to have a lift from from the road down to her house. And I was playing with it. There was a cable attached to a pulley to a car that she would ride in. And so when I was 10 years old, I rode on the car up and down the hill, and then I got out and kneeled down, and I was pulling on the cable as a 10-year-old, acting like I was pulling the car up. My friend was behind me, and the car was coming because I wanted to be Superman. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. I wanted to be that more powerful locomotive. And as I was pulling, my hands got caught in the pulley. They fed around. I yelled to my friend to turn it off, and he did, and now I'm stuck. Kind of like the stories of the coyote that gets its paw caught into a trap, and he has to decide to chew it off for himself. My friend ran away. I'm stuck. So I had to pull and rip and tear this hand free, removing 4 fingertips here, and then I couldn't get up, so I had to grab my wrist and stand up, break those bones, get up and pull to get free. So that's how I earned the nickname Nubs. That symbol, handicapped, the wheelchair, that was a lot of sadness. That was a lot of memory of my grandmother not being able to do what she used to do. It reminded me of my own injury. But a change began to happen. We shifted the symbol in America because of the American Disability Act to a more active, forward-rolling wheelchair. That's a mindset change. So adaptive athlete, plus more heart than scars, plus a Spartan race. So we started working out with people that were in wheelchairs to go through Spartan races, and that was powerful. And one of our first children we worked with was a little boy, Tommy. He did a small race with us, and he did well with it. They didn't think he'd live past the age of 10, but he did. And then he was 13. He's like, you're going to do an adult race. So here's Tommy and I doing an adult race.
All right, Thomas, what are we doing today?
Spartan race.
Are you doing the kids' race?
No.
No, you're not doing the kids' race. We are rigged up and geared out to go do an adult race for a young man with cerebral palsy. No matter what happened to you, you're more than your diagnosis, you're more than the disease, you're a bigger person than that because you're more than what happened to you.
Welcome to our North Carolina Reebok Spartan Sprint Weekend.
1, 2, 3, roll! We can really do impossible things together.
Haru, is this Sparta?
Tell him. This is Sparta.
Yeah.
I accidentally made the coolest job in the world for myself. So you take a Spartan racer, and you take an adaptive athlete, and then you add a student on autism spectrum. So that young man that was going to come help me, there was a woman that was, she was a wheelchair athlete, not much of an athlete. She lived in a wheelchair. She wanted to honor her son that she lost in the war, and she had polio, and she wanted to do the race, and she's like, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh boy, can you get in and out of the chair? She's like, not really. So I brought one of my friends that's a Marine, and another Marine came with me, and a group of people, we came together, and we started this race, and we thought, how are we gonna do this? And up comes this young man, and she says, remember me, I gave you chocolate, this is my son. Now, it was 105 degrees out. He had a long sleeve shirt, long pants, big boots, and he wasn't very verbal. We got through that race, and when I told the people at the Black Mountain Academy that I was going to get a job at part-time so I could do the charity, I told that story and go, do you think you could do that with other students on the autism spectrum? I said, well, let's give it a try. When you add that together, what you get, it's a total shift. It's that Spartan, it's that warrior, it's an adaptive athlete, it's more heart than scars, it's identity. This shield represents the people all over the place, and now around the world, that I'm in the battle for my life. And will you join me in it? When you add these together, you get more. Joe DeSena, that's the gentleman there that's in the wheelchair on the right. Michael Mills is on the left. He's my best friend. I'm behind there with the armor going, when I could still fit that stuff. So we managed to get the CEO of Spartan Races, convinced him, why don't you try racing? Michael said, hey, why don't you try to live in my world and race as an adaptive athlete? And Joe said, I'll do that. And this is what Joe said after he finished this. I called him up the other day and said, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. He goes, I know. Tell me, what are we going to say? He said, say this. He said, in 2014, I raced with more heart than scars in a wheelchair to challenge myself and focus on the abilities of adaptive athletes. And that unique perspective changed not only my life, but ultimately Spartan worldwide. So that 8.5 hours he spent in the chair along with us shifted his thinking, made Spartan brand more accessible, and Spartan brand is everywhere now. So what's it do for the adaptive athlete? There's Mark. Very rarely does Mark, after he was a police officer and had his back injury, is in a position that he's helping other people. Now, tying shoes isn't what's really going on there. He's providing emotional regulation for Ishwar. Ishwar, on the starting area for the race, this is the backstage before we get ready to start, he was so nervous to touch his own shoes because they were so muddy, he was overwhelmed. And Mark says, I'll help you. And so Mark's in a position that he's getting to help Ishwar. And Ishwar is a position where he's going to be the legs for Mark. And what ended up happening was, there he is later, completely covered. There's the mud flying off him. That's the dunk wall behind, where you have to go under a wall and come up with the other side completely submerged in muddy water. Now, when our parents see their students, their children, being covered in mud and playing along with other kids and being in this situation that they never thought possible, it changes. So it changes it for our school, or for our parents, for our staff. It changes the Spartan brand. It changed the charity. So a couple things we're going to talk about is question, quest, obstacles, resilience, interdependence, and fit. Of course, faith, love, and hope, which is what this is all about. When I was 13 years old, the year earlier, I was climbing on a treehouse, and I took a big fall and broke my wrist. I tied a rope around something. I got this. I didn't have it. And there I was up on something called the Postman's Walk, and that you're standing on a cable, holding on to a cable, and I didn't understand what post-traumatic stress disorder was. I didn't understand what truly being triggered was. I was in a situation, was recreating my accident, and I lost it. And I had to decide right then and there, in that question, do I have more heart than scars? Am I going to stop or complete the course? And a guy named Bernie climbed up beside me and talked to me through it. I went back to that same camp. There, my nose was running. I peed a little bit, I think. There was a lot of crying going on. There was a lot of ugly crying. But I went back, and I worked there, and I helped other students through that course. So you have to decide, is your heart more than the despair, more than the fear, more than the hatred? Can I make a choice in my daily living that my heart will exceed the limitations? It's a quest. It's not just a mission statement. In fact, our mission statement is a quest, which is a quest for faith, love, hope, and heart, achieved by overcoming obstacles together and encouraging others to live boldly. That's what this is about, is to encourage you and encourage the people in your life to be bold and take on the challenges. As soon as you say you're going to be bold and go on a quest, the world will give you obstacles. Whether you're on an obstacle course or not, the obstacle comes up. The financial, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the thought processes, it's going to be there. So when she was getting up there, she's like, I'm smiling, but if we mess up, she falls down all the way. The trust that she has in us in that obstacle is incredible. That's Michael Mills, again, who challenged Joe DeSena to go for a race. He's pulling a 1,200-pound truck behind him or more for 100 yards, hand over hand, and he had me beside him. He set a world record by pulling that. So the truck is attached to his harness, and each time he pulls with his hands, he's moving it forward. That's where the resilience comes in. When you face obstacles, it makes you strong, you become resilient, and then you need one another. You really need each other to be your shield wall against the despair. Joe says, not only that, you have to be fit, which is daily training. If you do it daily and you get into the regular routine of it, that becomes a normal part of life. And so you have to be obstacle ready. So that shield shows faith, love, hope, and heart. It's what we put out there to say to the world, this is what I'm trying to stand for or wheel for. But the other side of the shield is that any problem I have coming up, I ask myself the question, am I more than the problem that I have? Am I going to go on a quest to deal with that? Am I going to face obstacles? Am I become resilient? My interdependence, being fit, and I begin to build momentum like a wheel, forward progress. So the core values of Black Mountain Academy is citizenship, mindful living, and growth mindset. it tied in perfectly for what we were doing with our charity. So we first started off with 4 kids, and the first time we did a race, a couple of miles into it, they ran into some yellow jackets, and we thought, oh, well, that was great. Nobody thought we could do this. We went 2 miles. I guess we're done. The kid comes up to me and goes, hey, we checked the backpack. We have a little bit of Benadryl, just enough for one for each of us. We have some water, and we have some mud. I learned how to make a poultice by putting mud on a wound. I think we're going to be okay. We'll meet you back up top. We thought, what have we done? So here's now at our very last race. So now 54 kids have jumped over the fire, and this is our most recent race. I just happen to have the phone with me. Most of these guys are not extremely verbal. Some are not. But this is the most I've ever heard them talk.
Okay, I need just to take away from it. First of all, I want to say how proud I am of each and every one of you. And I want to hear from you one thing you're going to take away from this experience that you learned about you yourself or the world or...
Man, just how hard everyone works today, especially the people carrying the chair or carrying Erica up hills and across the rivers and in the mud. Found that really impressive. Yeah.
I'm going to take away that I now believe in myself to do hard stuff versus before when I didn't want to do any of it.
Yeah, you carry this shield through some pretty tough stuff. So, Sam, what does it mean that you'd have more heart than scars?
Means that I'm not a wuss,
Yeah.
which I have been called my whole life.
Well, you're certainly not. You're a Spartan right now. Spartan is a much better name than wuss.
I can't wait to brag about this for my 4 followers.
I've been missing out for the past like 16 years of my life, and I need to do more Spartans.
This is the thing.
Yep.
You got nervous on some of the height stuff, but you got yourself up and over it.
Yep. It was scary, but I did it. I just went for it. So.
And you carried the shield through the river that was deep. I'm like, are you sure you need some help? You're like, I think I got this. And you got it through. Thank you.
Well, first off, oh man, I've learned so much. I've learned that helping others is like, it shows that you care about them, and you shouldn't just focus on yourself, you should also focus on others. Even if they're different than you, everyone matters, you know? So, yeah.
I told my boys that we're going to do a video that I was coming over here to do this. I think that's cool. I said, hey, I'm going to hang out with the guy that did the Ironman flying suit. They go, get his autograph, get his picture. So they're used to me. Tommy's there. There's Billy. Billy and I started this. Initially, we called ourselves Team Nubs and Stubbs. He was Stubbs, I was Nubs. He's ridden his bike with the President of the United States, George W. Bush, different places after he lost his leg. He's sponsored by an Icelandic company for a leg. He's set all these kind of records and done these amazing things all over the world. And I keep trying to knight him. And every time I try to do it, he's like, it's not epic enough, it's not cool enough. Like, no matter what we did together, we'd finish some 60-hour event, he goes, it's not time. So I handed the sword to Tommy. Tommy whispered, hey, come here, Billy. And that man, an incredible human being, immediately took a knee. And he asked him this question. He said, do you have more faith than fear? That's Justin. He's a pilot. He's got his doctorate. He gives out medication. He also set a world record for being the first quadriplegic from completing a Spartan trifecta. Do you have more love than hate? That's our co-founder, Wendy. She's gone through her own trauma and abuse that she went through as a child, and now she's teaching as a therapist to help other young children come through that abuse and to stand and rise above it. Do you have more hope than despair? Chris Davis recently lost his brother to suicide. He's gone through a journey with weight loss and gaining through depression, but yet he continues to lift up other people. Martin Luther King, before we say, do you have more heart than scars, the question that impacted me was the most urgent question we have is, what are you doing for others? And that's where this all comes together. And so our leadership and the team building that we do for anywhere from executives to kids in schools or like my students is the team building, the responsibility, that social responsibility, building a sense of empathy and that concrete empathy, the accessibility, because we can go anywhere, diversity and service. So this is going to be a video that the boys actually made. We put together a song that someone said, this should be a song. Like, I'll write it. I don't know what I'm doing. A friend of mine said, well, I'll record it together. And so the science teacher got the music together with us. We played it. We sang it with the kids. We all worked together. And then one of our students, Izzy, took all the pictures and made this presentation. We can watch some of it. We might have a little time. We'll see. The fact that he did it himself and put it with a heartbeat, because every beat of the music, he picked the image that he wanted to be to tell the story. That's him. There's Izzy.
The crash, quiet all at once around. In the
That was Shannon, Mark.
Trapped like
There's Izzy climbing up the rope. Ishwar climbing up the rope.
After the shot, quiet all at once around.
That's Blind Pete. We call him Blind Pete because he's blind.
Another round. Even in my dreams, I hear the sound.
There he is again.
Marks we bear are the keepers of time. They're not who we are. We are more heart than scars. After the doctor spoke, quiet all at once around. Sickness keeps us bound, but they say that freedom can be found. Now they've got us counting back from 10. It's hard to remember when the scars hadn't made their mark. Now we stumble forward in the dark. 'Cause these marks we bear are the keepers of time. They're not who we are. We are more heart than scars.
That's my dog. And that's her with a medal.
My body may bear these marks, but the deepest
That's my little
scars
girl.
are in my heart. Tell me, am I gonna live? But you still want to hold me.
Show me your scars and I'll show you mine. I kiss every place the world took you apart. Show me your heart, I'll show you mine. I kiss every place the world took you apart. Peace be still, you're gonna live. I kiss every place the world took you apart. Peace be still, you're gonna live. I kiss every place the world took you apart.
These marks we bear are the keepers of time. They're not who we are. We are more heart than scars.
So, we were thrilled. It goes on for a while. It goes back and forth where I say I'm more heart and the kids sing back than scars. But we're bringing it together here. When I was a kid, I was jumping with my bike. And now as a semi-grown-up, I'm jumping over the fire with my dog and the wheelchair that we call Excalibur coming through. So, who I was, it's who I am. This idea of play, encourage one another. Encourage your children, encourage your family members. If someone is hurt, encourage them if they fall down to get back up again. Help lift them up. Because our identity in that song, it says, these marks we bear are keepers of time, but they're not who you are. You are more heart than scars. After I lost my fingers, my father, I'd have to soak my hands every day. And he would dry them off and he would kiss them and say, you're okay. Where we get torn apart, where the wound is where we can reach out and lift each other up. If you do that for yourself and you identify yourself saying, my heart is bigger than my scars, or you see it in other people all around the world, please use this expression. It is a battle cry. It's a triumphant thing to say. So let's see if you guys have been paying attention. I'm going to say something to you and see what you do. More heart. Thank you.
Zachary, to go through a Spartan race must be a very difficult thing.
Wait, which way are we doing? We're dancing. Okay, I'm going
Wherever
over
you
here.
want. The stage is yours.
Okay.
To go through a Spartan race must be a very difficult task, but to go through that with somebody on your shoulders is just something else. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I swear to God, the world needs more Zachs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to open up the questions. Anybody has a question for Zachary? Please go ahead. We have a question right here.
Yes.
Third row. The mic is coming right your way.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. It was really impressive. What's
Thank you.
advice you'd give on connecting with people on the autistic spectrum?
So the first step I like to do is to ignore all of the limitations that are already preconceived what's going on. So I just approach a kid almost like I'm meeting. It's an interesting thing to say this, but whenever I work with a lot of dogs, and my own dog had a lot of PTSD before we did some training, and I just come in with respect. I don't overlook in the eyes. I don't get too close. I approach almost like meeting somebody or almost like meeting a stranger, like an animal at first, to be like, I'm not going to be in your space too much. I'm not going to try too hard. I'm going to be still around you and find out what you need and what you're about, and then to begin what I notice and then comment on that and try to find a place of connection.
That's great. Thank you so much. Do we have another question? Yes, we have a couple. We have one from this young gentleman over here.
What's your definition of play?
Play.
Yeah.
It's practicing fun without thinking about in that moment. Like when I go snowboarding, when I'm snowboarding, I'm in that moment. So I'm practicing, it's useful, it's a transferable skill. But the good part of play is I am in that moment, because if I think about anything else, the past or the future, I need to be present. I'm going to wipe out. And so playing is showing up and being right there.
All right, that's great. So we have room for one more question, and there's a hand over here, please.
My question is the race itself, is it designed to be accessible for everyone, or is it constantly adapting?
No, the race is horrible. It's designed to be an absolute terrible experience for everybody. Sometimes it takes 7 of us just to get through the parking lot to get started. There's not one thing that we have handicap parking, but it's the biggest joke of all. A lot of times you have to have 4-wheel drive to get there. So sometimes our adaptive athlete will show up in their own vehicle, get to that spot, roll out in their everyday chair, go 2 feet, and have to transfer into our Excalibur mud chair. It's not accessible at all. In fact, when Joe DeSena tried, he said, I think I'll be okay. He tried to roll 3 feet in that wheelchair. You can't get anywhere. The mud is so deep, and there's so many obstacles, it would be impossible. It's accessible because we together can make it accessible. But the course is hard on purpose, and it's wonderful.
All right, do we have one more question? Well, I have a question.
Yes.
If you don't mind. What keeps you going?
Oh, seeing my students.
Yeah.
Their faces. I had an opportunity where one of our boys wasn't in a lot of trust. In the school itself, it was difficult even going on a trip by himself, and we weren't sure, was he going to be okay? How was he going to respond to this? What was he going to do? And when that concrete empathy kicked in and he started thinking about that wheelchair athlete, when he started thinking about Shannon more than himself, and each time he so gingerly picked her up and moved her in and out of the chair, and it just kept going and going. And so for me, I used to always jump over the fire at the end with the wheelchair athletes, with my best friends. They're on my back, it would be okay. And we got to the end of it, and I looked at Shannon and I say, I think Randy should take you over the fire. And she says, yeah. So her son has autism too. So for her, it was a chance to trust. Sometimes your own limitations, even the family members think, am I going to be okay? When I say I need you, are you going to show up? And it was healing for her. It was healing for Randy. And when I saw him pick her up and go over the fire and finish, I tell myself, I'm not going to cry during this race. And I cried during pretty much all of them. There's been about 80 of them, and I think, I'm tough. I'll be fine. The good thing about being covered in mud is you can't really tell. I was like, that's just mud in my eye. But please find something in your life that brings so much joy that it brings tears, that it brings you to a place that you move in a way that you help others move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To be honest, it was really difficult for me to hold my tears in when I was seeing that video. So thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.